Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle. You are listening to or watching Radio Maine, our video podcast where we explore and celebrate creativity and the human spirit with people who are connected to our wonderful state of Maine. We are sponsored by the Portland Art Gallery in Portland, Maine. Today I'm speaking with a longtime Maine resident, Maine native. I originally thought actually she was a Portland native, but turns out she's from Limestone, which is at the other upper half of the state, which very far away. This is Gretchen Halpert. She is a scientific illustrator, founder of a scientific illustration distance program, and a longtime former molecular biologist. So when we say that we explore creativity and the human spirit, you have been exploring it your whole life, right here in Maine. Thank you for coming today.
Yes,
Good to see you.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure.
And I did move from Limestone when I was very, very, very young.
You still
I'm
get
from
credit.
Portland, but I get credit. Anytime somebody says Portland's not really Maine, I say, well, I'm from Limestone, and they say, okay, you're good.
Well, and I tell this story often that my family has multiple generations in the state on both sides, and yet my parents went to Vermont and I was born in Vermont. And so when I returned, I can't claim to be from Maine, despite the fact that I have multiple brothers and sisters and two of my children being from Maine, but I'm not a Mainer. So you're a deep Mainer and I'm apparently not. Oh, well. So here we are. So you and I met actually at the Portland Art Gallery.
Yes.
You were at one of the first Thursday art openings. Tell me about that connection. How did you end up making it through that set of doors?
I've been visiting there probably as long as they've been open, and I go visit a lot of galleries on First Friday. And I probably grew up going to galleries with my parents. So if there's an opening, if there's a show, I usually stop in. And what inspires me is that when I go to gallery openings is that I look around at all the different work and realize you can do anything. Anything is okay to do. You don't have to stay in your lane. It doesn't have to be a particular focus or a particular medium. It doesn't even necessarily have to be good. It is inspiration to continue creating.
Well, I like that part about not necessarily needing to be good, which is good for people like me because I love to play with visual media, and yet I have no background, no training formal, and it makes me really happy. So for you to say, just
Doesn't
do it.
matter.
Just do it. If it makes you happy, why not?
I've been teaching for a long time, and when somebody says, oh, I can't draw, or I'm not good at this, I say, it doesn't matter, just do it. And a lot of it is tricks. A lot of it is technique. And then usually by the end of the semester, they're like, oh, I can do this.
Well,
I encourage you to continue.
Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement. It's, I will say, you're a molecular biologist in your past life. I assume you still claim that identity, even if you're not actively working as one. As a physician who shows up in an artist space, I look around and I think, ooh, this is a little intimidating, but it's great to hear that you have had this sort of parallel life path for many years and that you've been able to explore fully these two very creative elements of yourself, which can interconnect even though we may not necessarily think of them as interconnected.
Yeah, I think that, well, if you're in the field of science, you start to notice that most scientists and physicians also have a creative side. They're either photographers, my husband's a cell biologist and he's a photographer, or they're dancers, or they're musicians. So I think both fields involve creativity and exploration, attention to detail. especially in my field of science illustration. There's a lot of attention to detail.
When I was in medical school, we became very familiar with Netter's Atlas of Human Anatomy. And this is something that's been around now for a very long time. And I still have my version in paper form. And it was amazing to me, the level of detail that this person who originally created it was able to achieve. And then I look at some of the pieces that I found of yours online, and I think the ones that I was looking at were more botanical in nature. And it tells me there's a long history of people who have been observing the natural world, have been translating it in very minute detail, so that people can learn from it or enjoy it or engage with it. What inspired you to get into scientific illustration?
I majored in botany in college, and I wanted to be an environmentalist. I wanted to be one of those people who stopped plants from, not botanical plants, but industrial plants from being built because there's a little clover or something, kind of like, are you familiar with Furbish's lousewort? Yes. Okay, and that stopped the building of the Dicking-Lincoln Dam? Yes. Okay, so I wanted to do that kind of work. But when I finished college, there was really no funding in that field. And a friend knew that I was interested in science and interested in art, and she told me about this biological illustration program in Connecticut. So I applied to graduate school specifically to take this program, and I did. And at the same time, a year later, they started a scientific and technical illustration program at the Rhode Island School of Design through the night school. And my advisor advised me to enroll and maybe wait a year until they had the program solid. And I remember saying to her, well, if I wait a year, I'm going to be 23. That's too old to go back to school. And she was good. She didn't laugh at me. She said, well, you're going to be 23 anyway, 33, 43, 53. I think she was in her 50s. And you're going to be 83, hopefully, and don't let that stop you. And I have remembered that every time I want to start something new. So I did move to Providence, did the program at RISD, and then at the same time, I was working at Rhode Island Hospital as a cell and molecular biologist, and then started teaching art and medicine at Brown. That was an adjunct course for first-year medical students. And that combining the science and the art has really always been there.
So for you, it doesn't sound like it was ever a specific choice to leave one and go to another. They always sort of peacefully coexisted.
They always coexisted, yes. And even while I was majoring in botany at Connecticut College, in summers I would take classes at Portland School of Art, now Mecca ND, and my father was a professor at Mecca, and so I could take classes free. So I would take drawing classes, life drawing classes, ceramics. And so there was always the science and the art. And when I had to choose a major in college and I chose botany, my parents said, science? Why science? What's wrong with art? What's wrong with English? What's wrong with creative writing? Because those were their fields. So it was sort of the opposite of many parents. And probably a lot of your viewers will recognize that my parents, Steve and Judy Halpert, have always been involved with the arts community in Portland. So arts has always been part of my upbringing.
Yes, your parents actually owned an iconic Portland landmark.
Yes, the movies on Exchange Street.
And so I think it kind of tickles me a little bit that we often will hear the opposite, that people sort of snuck into art by virtue of going into whatever they needed to go into law, they needed to go into medicine, they needed to go into engineering, something because the expectation of the family was do something where you can make a living. And here you are, and your parents are saying, why don't you do something that's in our field? And you're like, no, I want to go over here and do this other thing in the sciences. So it does tickle me a little bit that you have had that opposite experience.
Which they were very supportive of. They always encourage us. There are 4 of us children, and they always encouraged us to just do whatever we wanted.
I've come to really love botany. And for me, I backed into it a little bit. I mean, I always loved flowers and just for the sort of aesthetic qualities that they possessed. But then as a clinician, I became interested because there are a lot of healing properties of plants that has been translated into now pharma and big pharma, which is interesting in its own way. And not bad. I mean, we do need medication. I'm not suggesting we don't need to use medications appropriately. However, what I loved about plants is that they offered an alternative for many of the things that ail us, actually. But then it was through understanding their properties and then starting to look at these plants and being like, well, that is just pretty amazing that nature creates a passion flower and it looks the way that it does. Or understanding petals and sepals and all the different parts of plants that when I was a zoology major, biology major, but focused on humans. What was it about plants that spoke to you? Why would you choose botany originally?
It was really pretty simple. When I applied to college, when you filled out the application, you had to choose a major. And I went down the list. I thought, I don't know what I want to do. I want to wait till I get to college and decide. You know, my world is pretty small right now, and I want to see. But you had to choose a major, and so I went down the list and thought, oh, well, I like plants, I guess. Check. Botany, and I can always change it. And most schools don't offer botany as a major. They offer biology. Connecticut College didn't even offer biology. They offered botany or zoology and marine biology. And first I thought I would major in marine biology and then remembered that I don't do well on boats. So I chose botany, and we did a lot of field work, and that appealed to me. So all of our labs were outside. We're trekking, we're in the salt marshes, we're spending our time outdoors. And so I loved it. But there wasn't much thought going into it.
Well, I mean, it is interesting because it sounds like you backed into it a little bit as well. However, you didn't back into it like, meh, I'm just going to check this box. You're like, well, I do love plants.
I love plants. I love being outside. And I double majored in botany and dance. And Connecticut College had a great dance program. Not that I wanted to be a dancer, but I also didn't have the right physique to be a dancer. But I loved it. So that's what I chose things that I enjoyed.
And I think that's where I want to focus in. Is that so many people choose things because they think it's the thing that they should choose. They should. They go in a direction of shouldness. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If you think, oh, I'm going to choose accounting, not because I love numbers, but because I'm going to have a good job and it will pay my mortgage, that's all right. It's a completely different version, though, of a life than the one you're describing, where you said, I don't really know, but I know that I like these things. I like dance. I like plants. And so I'm just going to move forward and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I think that freedom of exploration sometimes can bring us closer to what we would want to do with our lives.
Yeah, and I feel fortunate to have been able to do that.
So you also have, one of the other ways that we came to know you was through a very special museum in Portland, and the Maine Jewish Museum, which I think is very important to you and your family. And the Maine Jewish Museum has also been interested in art and the interface with art and kind of culture. So talk to me about that.
When I was getting ready to move here, and I grew up here, my family's been here, and then I left to find work and settled in Providence for a long time, and then I married, and his job took him to Corning, New York, and so when we were able to move back, we moved back here, and I had a solo show at the Maine Jewish Museum through Nancy Davidson. She looked at my work, and we planned it 3 years ahead, because that's how long they're booked. So that was a very nice introduction of my work to the Portland community. If you go into the Maine Jewish Museum, there are plaques on the second floor about history. And my mother's family is up there, and my father's family is up there, and my uncle was up there. My mother's family, my great-grandfather is up there, pedaling whatever he was pedaling on his horse-drawn carriage. So, yeah, I feel as though I belong. My mother grew up on Munjoy Hill. My father grew up in Woodfords, and it was a very small Jewish community in Portland, very small, and less active than when my parents grew up. I don't exactly know what to say. Being Jewish is who I am. Does it inform my artwork or my science or my life? I don't know. I'm not aware of it. But it's a part of who I am.
Well, I think you identify something correctly, and that is that it's not a huge community. The Jewish community in Portland and in Maine generally is not what I would call in large. I mean, it's I think it's very active. I think people are very engaged, but in contrast to the Maine Jewish Museum, if you go just down the street, is the enormous Catholic cathedral. Mm-hmm. And I think there are numbers of evidence of other faiths within Portland and within Maine.
And there used to be more synagogues and temples in Portland
mm-hmm.
than there are now.
That's why I ask about this, because I for many years knew that my father's family was from Bedford. My mother's family was from South Portland. I didn't realize actually that my mother's family was really from Portland. And I have my grandfather's diploma on my wall. He graduated from Deering High School. His family members were going back a couple generations from Portland. So when you talk about your family, I don't think my family has any plaques anywhere, because we're just a big rambling Irish and French Catholic family that, I mean, we just were sort of more ubiquitous. But I also, having recognized this connection that my family has that I never really knew about through literally decades of my life. And I trained at Maine Medical Center's family medicine site, which is across from the Maine Jewish Museum. I mean, I had relatives that were very familiar with Munjoy Hill going back generations. So when you talk about being drawn back in to Portland as a result of this connection that your family had that happens to be related to the Jewish Museum, I think there is a strength to that I find very interesting and kind of relatable in a way.
Yeah, interesting. And if any of your listeners haven't been to the Maine Jewish Museum, the art shows are excellent and impressive, and anybody can go in the hours that they're open and walk around and look, and it's a wonderful place to have in the community. And across the street from there, you were referring to across the street, because I walk around listening to my mother, that's where a lot of the immigrants learned to speak English.
Yeah, and for a while it was Levinsky's. That building used to be Levinsky's way back in the day, and then there was the old church that I actually did my residency in the basement of the church. We could hear the plumbing that was going up above us. But I think that it's the sense of connectedness and a depth of connectedness that sometimes we don't even realize we have, that I'm so fascinated by. And for you connect through seeing small things and going back and examining them and then detailing them and documenting them. Some of us we spend our lives just wandering around in our own past without realizing it.
When I moved back to Portland a few years ago, 4 years ago, and I was coming back every month or two and more in the summer, so I was aware of how Portland was growing. But when I moved back here, I literally breathed a sigh of relief and felt, I'm home. I'm happy I'm home. And that was interesting to be aware of. So I understand what you're talking about too. That connection, I wasn't even aware that I would feel that.
Do you feel that connection of home with self when you're doing your work, when you're doing your illustration, when you're doing your art?
Sometimes when I'm doing a science illustration that's for work, I'm very much focused on the work and the detail. I love the research stage. So whatever I'm doing, I love the research. And I love the process. Whatever I'm doing. Like right now, on the side, I'm making monoprints. And I love the discovery of what's going to happen. And I also am involved with book arts. So I love the process and the research. When I'm creating science illustrations for work, or any art, I would say any art, there are parts of that time that I'm connected with myself, and I lose myself, and I love it. There are other times that I'm connected with the intellectual part of it. This doesn't look right. Why is this going this way? I need to do more research. Why isn't this working? Step back, figure this out. So there are multi-levels of my connection. There are plenty of times, too, that I walk away frustrated. So it's not sit down to paint and, oh, I'm happy and everything is going well and look, here's a beautiful painting. That's not always the way it happens.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, actually. I mean, it's a very realistic view of, it is the work. So I think it's important for people to know that, because you do create beautiful pieces. And so you can look at it and feel like, oh, that's a lovely, I get a sense of this ethereal beauty of this lovely flower. But it does take concentration. There's a process involved.
Yes, and I'll often tell my students, this drawing is practice for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And we know everything we do is practice for the next.
Well, one of the things I really enjoy about being at the art gallery is, as you mentioned when we first started talking, is that there's such a broad range of art and what people, and this is just things that we can show in a gallery that is considered to be art of artists we represent. So we can have Susan Johnson, she's a watercolorist, and she's a former biologist and a former educator out of Harvard, and she creates a coneflower on a monarch. She has the aloes and other natural things. And we can have Missy Dunaway, and she has a significant interest in Shakespeare. So she's done a lot of research in Shakespeare and the birds of Shakespeare, and she incorporates that into her art. But then we have people who are landscape painters. We have people who are in plein air. We have, and I think that all-encompassing nature of what we call art and what we call work, truly, I think it gives people hope for the possibility that whatever element of themselves that shows up as being creative, there's a space for it. So how do you encourage your students who are showing up? I mean, maybe they're just showing up because I want to be a scientific illustrator, and I think this is a good path to a job. And that's a very respectable reason to join. But if they're showing up for other reasons.
They're showing up for a lot of different reasons. This is an online program that I'm doing, though I teach in person too. They're coming from, some of them are students, like high school and college students, or just finishing college, and this is a field they want to go into. So they're showing up for that. Other people, this is their second career. Others, they want to just learn how to do this for themselves, or they want to improve their skills because they want to apply for another program. There are a lot of scientists and physicians who want to illustrate their own papers. So they want to learn how to do that. The classes are small, excuse me. And so they also have a community of other people doing the same thing. Even though it's online, they become friends often outside of class. So they have different reasons, but they're all connected by an interest in biology and art. And so they're also really very nice people. I mean, if you're interested in nature and you're interested in art, we have plenty to talk about.
Well, I'm glad that you talked about the intersection between art and medicine and the work that you did with Brown. I wrote a piece for a regional magazine where it was about the Tufts students who would go to the Portland Museum of Art, Tufts School of Medicine, who were affiliated with Maine, and they were talking about how to notice things. And they were talking about the importance of noticing things, and they began with art that was on the walls of the Portland Museum of Art. And I think there is a benefit, really, even if you're not going to be an illustrator, there's a benefit to the noticing, and there's a benefit even in this digital age where we think that everything can be sort of abstracted down and entered into a computer. You're still sitting in front of a human. You're still having a conversation. There are things that you can see that don't require tests or x-rays or MRIs.
Yes, and I think sometimes some people get too focused on the tests and don't notice the person. and other things that may be going on. We're a very segmented society. You go to this person for this, you go to this person for this, you go to this person for this. Everybody is specialized. So, like what you're saying, seeing the whole, and Tufts and Brown and Harvard and other schools have these combination programs. A lot of medicine and music, math and music overlaps. And Brown would also, we would take those students into the RISD Museum. And every week we'd do something else. We'd go visit a plastic surgeon who was also a sculptor, a physicist who was also a dancer and understood cause and effect. And so I don't know if I answered your question or if I went off on a tangent.
No, I mean, I think it's mostly a conversation, really.
Yeah.
It's just, I think what you've described is true. And we certainly want, in this case, I mean, it's any clinician, but in particular, because I'm a physician, that's where I'm representing here. We certainly want people to do well on tests. We want them to be smart.
Yeah.
We want them to have access to basic knowledge. We want them to be able to interface with knowledge bases. And also, if part of the focus on the test and the numbers and the computer takes us so deeply in that direction, then pulling us ourselves back out and saying, okay, well, let's look at this art. What do you see? What do you see in this piece? And that enables us just to refocus, really. It's like putting on a different set of glasses for seeing near and seeing far. And it's a skill. I mean, what you described in your distance-based education program for scientific illustration is you're teaching skills. There are things that can be learned and applied.
Exactly.
So for you, having moved back to Portland 4 years ago and having had a showing at the Maine Jewish Museum and interfacing regularly with the creative community, and also maintaining this distance-based program that you do, are there things that you are looking forward to, or things that you're hoping to still do, or things that are calling to you creatively?
Continuing to explore. The week after next, I'm going to take a workshop at the Algonquin Museum on using jelly plates for doing landscapes with slow drying acrylics and making monoprints with that. I mentioned being part of the book arts, or being interested in book arts, and the Kate Cheney Center for the Book Arts at the new amazing Crew Center. There's a book arts critique group that I'm part of. So we do regular projects of making books on our own on different themes. So, and I did a children's book with my husband for the grandchildren. And so that was very loose. And I just like creating. And some people might say it's good to focus on one thing. And there are a lot of botanical artists who focus only on plants. There are botanical artists who focus only on plants, only on orchids, only on plants, only on orchids, only in watercolor, only on vellum. And they're exceptional. Their work is exceptional. I like doing pen and ink. I like doing watercolor. I like painting with oils. I like doing landscapes. I like doing pastels. So I don't know where my explorations are going to take me, but wherever they do, everything adds to your creativity. Every job that you've had, even if it's stocking shelves someplace, which I have done, waiting tables, which I have done, being a scientist in a laboratory handling radioactivity, which I have done, animal surgery I've done there, and doing small animal surgery was difficult for me in that I would be cannulating a vein and thinking, oh, I want to draw this. I want to illustrate that I'm doing this, but if I do, the animal will die. So continue. But everything adds to a life of creativity and exploration.
So where can people find your work?
They can find it physically. They can contact me anytime. And if they Google Gretchen Halpert, or with my middle name, Gretchen Kai Halpert, that's the only name in the world that comes up. So pretty easy to find. I'm rebuilding my website. So I lost my domain name. So I'm having to completely rebuild my website, which will be Gretchen-Halpert.com instead of GretchenHalpert.com. So right now you'll just come up to a blank page, but they could Google me. They can look at my program and look at a lot of student work. There's a gallery of student work up there they do a lot of impressive work, and that's Gretchen Halpert-distanceprogram.com. Instagram, Facebook. I promote using social media for my students, but I'm very lax at it because I don't particularly like doing the look at me, look at me, look at me. And it takes time, a lot of time, and I'd rather be doing something else. So don't be disappointed if you look me up on Instagram and Facebook, and you don't see a lot of recent posts because I just don't do that. But anybody can contact me, really, anytime.
Well, I hope, Gretchen, that you and I will see each other at an upcoming art gallery opening on another First Thursday, because it was great to meet you then, and it would be nice to see you again.
Definitely. I will. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed learning more about your artistic work and also your connection to the Maine community.
Happy to be back in Maine.
Welcome. 4 years in, but welcome.
Yes,
still.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle. You have been listening to or watching Radio Maine, our video podcast, where we explore and celebrate creativity and the human spirit with a Maine connection. We are sponsored by the Portland Art Gallery in Portland, Maine. As I've mentioned, you can join us first Thursdays of every month for our art openings in Portland, Maine in person. You can find our artists online. You can also go to radiomaine.com, and you can go to our Substack, where we have an online art magazine, which is called Off the Wall Art Magazine, and that is, again, on Substack. But in the meantime, I encourage you to go see the work that Gretchen Halpert is doing. And if you have an interest in scientific illustration in particular, maybe you could take a class with her. It's been a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you.